Determined action against the 20,000 hippies who've gathered in a village in Worcestershire. The hippies built a shantytown on land in the village on Friday when they arrived for a festival over the bank holiday weekend. Police say some of the hippies have left the village, but most are still there.
Day 4 and the party still goes on. Castle Morton Common, normally a tranquil beauty spot in the Malvern Hills, has become a vast campsite. Around 10,000 so-called New Age travellers are still left, half the original number. Local residents have called it a no-go area. There's no running water, no sanitation, nearby fields have become toilets. Half a mile away, the police are keeping a low profile. Last night, 2 flares were fired at a police helicopter. They missed. Police say they didn't respond for fear of provoking violence. Residents say police are letting the law be broken.
How are you going to protect me? How are you going to protect any of these residents? I think there's been a force of something like 80 police distributed around the area, and there's 20,000 of them. And it only needs somebody to lose their temper, only needs somebody to raise a shotgun or something to get out of control. And we're just at their mercy.
This, for example, is a syringe and some other item which was thrown into our garden.
At the height of the festival, there were about 400 police officers to around 20,000 travellers. Most of the police officers I've spoken to say they don't dare go inside. They can just sit, watch and wait. They're waiting for the travellers to leave of their own accord, but residents fear the travellers are here to stay. Anya Seetharam, ITN, Worcestershire.
Well, the arrival of the travellers has led to protests by some residents who say they are afraid to leave their homes.
The local MP Michael Spicer wants them moved on by the police. He joins me now from Worcestershire. Specifically, Michael Spicer, what action do you want the police to take?
Well, the first thing is that we want these campers to leave quietly and immediately. That's the first important priority. The second priority is that it never should happen again. And what I want to see is the police being given whatever powers they need to prevent this kind of illegal encampment, which is a public health risk and is also of tremendous consternation to people who live nearby it.
Which powers are you looking for the police to prevent it happening again?
What I want to look into is to see whether we can't get similar powers to the powers that, for instance...
I beg your pardon, I think we've lost the link for the moment. Michael Spicer, can you hear me now? If we could go, yes. What powers do you want from the police?
Well, I want powers similar to those that the Metropolitan Police have to ban marches, for instance, that they have in London, which are going to be against...
I'm afraid we have problems with that link. We'll have to take a break. Subject, the controversy over the hippies who've moved into the Worcestershire village. And we'll discuss how to balance their rights with those of local residents. Landowners in other parts of the country are now on full alert in case the travellers move to a new campsite. In the studio is Julia Pollock from the Country Landowners Association, who says the travellers cause unnecessary disruption. We also have Mike Steer from Catalyst magazine, which represents New Age views. Mike Steer, if I can start with you. They've upset local people, they've upset the police. I mean, they're in a right mess, aren't they?
Well, the situation is that it's very hard for people who want to live an alternative lifestyle in this country to actually do so without harassment of some kind. I don't defend what's happened there. I'm not up to date with the up-to-the-minute news, but I think that we've seen continuous harassment of people attempting to live alternative lifestyles.
They're just being harassed because they're alternative.
The problem is that it's not actually an alternative lifestyle. A lot of these people are dependent on the state, and in fact, a lot of what it actually comes down to is they're living above the law, and they're not prepared to comply with the same laws as everybody else. Not everybody, but most of them. And what's happening on the common is that you have 20,000 people crammed into essentially a 200-acre site, and there is general lawlessness. They're not complying with the same bylaws. So it's a little bit more sophisticated than saying that people want to live an alternative life. It's not a legal alternative in a lot of cases.
So let's take up that. I mean, after all, You don't have the right to live alternatively outside and above the law, do you?
Right. I think the question is, in a civilized society, we ought to have laws which enable people to live alternative lifestyles. I mean, you talk about them being supported by the state, but I'm a mortgage holder and I'm supported by the state for my lifestyle. You know, so I don't think there's a moral difference, really, whether people are drawing unemployment benefit or whether they're subsidized by the established conventions of the law.
You can certainly live an alternative lifestyle within the law. It's simply not really an answer to the question that what about the harassment of local landowners? What about the fact that fences are disappearing? You have 600 dogs coming out of this site. You have fencing being removed. You have livestock being savaged. Anybody can have an alternative lifestyle, but it has to be within the law.
But there are instances.
Can I just stop you there? We can go now to Worcestershire, to Simon Warrilow. If he's there, tell me, how can you possibly defend what you're doing out there?
Well, how about looking at this in the world? Look at India, look at South Africa, South America. People have festivals, people have gatherings. It happens all over. The people around here, the main problem, they tell about traffic congestion. Somebody just said there was livestock savage. This is terrible. 20,000 people. What's gone on up that mountain, considering there's 20,000 people? There'll be no rubbish. It'll be tidy. The spirit of the festival, it's a free idea. It happens all over the world. In England, it feeds back. In England, somehow, the English way can't handle the idea of a festival. It happens all over the world. Why not?
I can answer that. It's a very simple answer to that point, and that is that England is one of the most densely populated countries in the world, in fact, much more densely populated than places like Africa and India.
Not India, which you referred to.
Well, per acre, it is actually more densely populated, and what in a lot of instances is being promoted is a general lawlessness. So you can't have a situation in this country because it's not big enough, there are too many people for the land area involved, for everybody to do what they want.
But if we talk of general lawlessness, you see, what I think many travellers will remember is the situation of the so-called Beanfield War 3 years ago, when the police ran amok, and members of your own association were horrified with what happened. We've had another situation earlier this year where a certain group of travellers in North Avon had legitimately bought and paid for land and were then evicted from it. Despite the fact that they were willing to do the necessary health measures that were required of them.
I would like to go back to Simon Rollo in Worcestershire, if he's there. Everybody's talking about lawlessness. I mean, you did fire flares at the police. That isn't going to bring public sympathy on your side.
I couldn't quite catch some of what you said there, but you asked me about lawlessness.
I want to know, why did you fire flares at the police helicopter?
I didn't. I saw somebody put in a few November the 5th rockets. They were landing well below the height of the helicopter, and they were nowhere near it. It was just take that for a while. It wasn't a serious attempt at bombing police. The lawlessness question, now, somebody was mugged up there. Terrible thing happens in the city. He was dealt with there. Things are dealt with there. There's places to take lost children. I have lived on the road for the last 13, 14 years. I haven't had a key in my pocket to lock a possession away. I've lived on travelling sites, and I've never locked a door. I've never had a key in my pocket. What lawlessness? There's honesty.
Well, what about the people on whose doorsteps you are now? They're not happy.
I know. It's unfortunate for the people whose doorstep we're now on. It's nice for us to be out of the way of local residents. It is a highly populated place, England. It's difficult sometimes, but they should be treated civilly, I do believe, and there will be no rubbish when we leave. The place will be left tidy, and, well, I think if somebody was to go stealing off one of the local residents, or the likes of that, they would be sorted out by the travelling people, never mind the police or anyone.
And are you planning to leave there? Are you planning to leave?
Can you say that again, please?
Where are you going next?
Well, this point in the festival, I think people will be sort of having the odd beer and having a chat and work it out from then, like, who knows? I was just having a party up the road, and suddenly I find myself talking to you here.
And
I don't know where I'm going next.
And do you know when you're leaving?
No, I don't know when I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'm going next. And I expect I could get 15,000 people to say exactly the same thing.
Simon, thank you very much for joining us. Well, Julia, there you are. I mean, he's saying 15,000 people are having a good time. They'll sort out their own affairs and they'll clean up the rubbish.
Well, if there is a rubbish-free site at the end of this, I will be very surprised. It will be a first in the history of this problem that there's absolutely no rubbish left behind. What will be left behind is a very large clean-up bill, which the local ratepayers will have to foot. Already there are reports of livestock having been savaged. Already there are reports that we've received of a number of local residents who've been evacuated from their homes because they're so terrified. And in fact, in certain instances where vehicles are travelling towards the common, they have actually been stopped from getting anywhere near it by New Age travellers. And our view is that this is simply not acceptable. We cannot have a situation. Obviously, the gentleman there may not have been breaking the law, but he's, in our experience, tends to be in the minority. I'm sure there are some responsible travellers, but with 20,000 of them on a very limited space, it's very difficult to control them.
Julia Pollock from the Country Landowners Association, Mike Steer from Catalyst Magazine, and Simon Warlock in Worcestershire. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.